Hello, and thanks for joining us on today's episode of Constructive Conversations. I'm your host, Nick Svikauskas. The intention of this podcast is to explore the mindset and actionable approaches that empower entrepreneurs to achieve success in all aspects of life while inspiring listeners to confidently pursue their own dreams. The reason why I do this podcast is because 10 years ago, I knew I wanted to start a business, but I had no idea where to start. I didn't have the confidence and I didn't have any role models to follow. So the goal is to provide that inspiration for new entrepreneurs and to provide fuel for those who are already doing it. Joining us today is Tim Ryan. Tim lives in Richmond, Virginia with his wife, Anya, and nine-month-old son. He has a background in financial technology and payment processing. He started his first company at 21 years old, has started 4 companies to date. He's currently the CEO and founder of Blue Swipe and a community called Your Life Ventures. Thanks so much for coming on today, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
So tell us a little more about your companies. What do those look like today? Your company and the community you mentioned.
Absolutely. Well, Blue Swipe is a financial technology company. We have got a unique journey of how we landed where we are today. We originally got started by helping small business owners with their payment processing. And when we first got started about a decade ago, what we found oftentimes in the space, which is still very true, there was just a lot of opaque fees. There was a lot of deception kind of in the payment processing space. Anybody that's accepted credit cards can probably say it's a little confusing. You see fees that are taken out. You're not exactly sure what they're for. And so we got started with the business really as a way to just make that simpler for every business owner we would meet. Along the way, we found that the best way to help the most business owners was not necessarily to talk to them directly, though we still do that a lot today as well, but was actually to find different entities that had lots of small businesses, whether that was a bank, if that was a software company, and educate them and their customers on what payment processing should look like, integrate to all the different applications they need. And today what we do is we actually build custom payment processing programs for B2B companies, so they have a solution that can help all of their customers. We oftentimes can even brand it to their name if they want it to look like them, and then we can add value to small business owners, and they don't have to deal with a lot of the deception that you still see kind of in the space today. So that's Blue Swipe in a nutshell. We got started actually in our hometown, Richmond, Virginia, and today we're, I think, right around 40 states. So not quite in all 52 states, but we've been excited to see it grow, and it's been fun to see people in cities that we've never even been to start taking advantage of the same product that our neighborhood companies used to use. So that's a little bit about Blue Swipe. Along the way, as I'm sure probably a lot of your listeners can appreciate, as a founder of a company, I feel like you go through a lot of seasons of trying to figure out, okay, what is my vision? Like, what kind of life am I trying to live? How can I drive this company and create the impact I want while at the same time not losing the time that I want with my family or my friends? And what is the impact that I'm making beyond just my day-to-day work? And so ended up through really some almost, I would say, divine connections, some great mentors in my life, had a great community open up. And it's an entrepreneurship community. We launched an apprentice program earlier this year, and it's called Your Life Ventures. And so I'm technically now a co-founder in it, and we empower entrepreneurs to become entrepreneurs and do it without the need of capital or debt. I started my traditional business, applied the riskiest way possible, quit my job, took all my life savings and invested into this company. Moved out of the apartment I was in because I couldn't afford it, and I moved in with roommates, had a $500 a month rent that I could barely afford, and just bootstrapped the company until we could create some of the success we have today. However, we've realized as we've gotten older that that's not always the most realistic thing for everyone, especially once you start to get more responsibilities, wife, kids, mortgages, things of that nature. And so what Your Life Ventures really does is really take someone through a preparatory process, making sure budget-wise, vision-wise, values-wise, you are in a spot to start a business and actually do it in your spare time so that eventually, as your entrepreneurial income is growing, if it's at least 80% of your salary, you can make that decision of quitting your job and going all in on the dream, but you don't have to do it in such an abrupt way. And we've really found it be very fulfilling. And it's also fun because we have a community that people can kind of tie into, and they have other like-minded people that they can run alongside of. And we always say it's fun to win with your best friends in life. And so that's, I think the passion has really been helping people take some of those moves and avoid some of the mistakes that maybe I did the hard way. So that's a little bit about the journey.
That's great. That sounds like a great community. Can you take us back to when you're 21 like you said, quitting your job, taking your life savings, and starting your company. Can you talk about what that looked like?
Yeah, totally. I've got a very unique background, and I might even go back just one step before that to give some context. So my mom and dad were in the corporate world. My dad was climbing the corporate ladder, and he worked in the steel industry. He was an architectural representative. He had a downsizing that happened at his company, left him without a job, and so he was out of work for about 6 months trying to find something new. We ended up moving up to Pennsylvania. I'm from Richmond, Virginia, of course, and we lived in like 3 different places up there. He found a couple of positions, but they never were quite as good as the one he previously had. Eventually, after a few years, makes it back down to Virginia, finds a better role. And the long and short of it is, I saw us move about 6 times in 10 years. So I felt a little bit like a military kid. I'm sure anybody that's been in the military or had military parents, they can understand how you're just moving all the time. But it really taught me at a young age that if someone else is writing my paycheck, they can stop writing my paycheck, right? Like corporate America is not always stable. And so if I was probably 16, 17 years old when I was thinking like I want to start some type of a business. I was actually homeschooled. And when I graduated, I was only 17. I didn't want to jump right into college because I'm like, okay, I don't know what my major is going to be. I don't want to just rack up student loans and debt and not really have a very clear plan with what I'm doing here. So I took a gap year from 17 to 18, and that's when I started working at a credit card processing company. And it was an $8 an hour telemarketing job. I mean, we used to just call in to businesses in Arkansas. And this is also I'm dating myself here a little bit. This would have been like 2007, maybe 2008. So there was still a big percentage of the country that did not accept credit cards. And we would oftentimes just be setting them up with a system, educating business owners on the entire industry, why credit card processing was valuable. And so I really cut my teeth at a young age to understanding how to sell, number one. But then number two, the conversations I had with these business owners showed me that you didn't have to be anybody super special. A lot of them were, a little bit more blue collar. They were good at a trade, but they really didn't, understand what it meant to kind of grow a business and how to do that in an effective way. And I started realizing that like I could add value, and also, man, maybe there's a way that I could be like one of these business owners. I mean, they didn't seem any different than you or I. And so therefore I had that kind of entrepreneurial bug really early. I mean, I was 17, 18 years old. And from that point forward, I was like, okay, I'm going to start a business of some kind. And I didn't actually think it was going to be in credit card processing at all. That was just the day job I had. Well, I ended up getting promoted 2 different times. And at this point, I delayed college, so never ended up going to university. I soon discovered as I got kind of closer into some of the inner workings of the company that I was at, that there were some things that just honestly weren't ethical, things that were marketed one way but really were another. And that was when I had my first opportunity in business to make a decision based on my values. Was I going to appease my boss, my employees, or maybe just kind of turn a blind eye and stay at a company that was doing things that I didn't agree with? Or was I going to be, I guess, kind of stand on my own 2 feet and say, I don't believe in this, and I now have a decision to do something different? And I guess I was just bold enough at that point in my life that I said, okay, I'm going to do something different. And I distinctly remember the moment in time. I went up to my office, I looked out the window. It's really funny. I was 21 and I had like a corner office, and I thought like I'd made it in life. So it's a little bit of a joke, but I was like literally like, man, I got a corner office. But in my corner office, I looked out the window, and I just remember thinking, if I don't try to start my own business today, will I regret this 5 years from now? And the answer is yes. And so I said, you know what? I've got to do it. I got to go all in. And so I literally quit my job. A week later, I'd learned how to get contracts with different like payment processors and how to kind of go through a process of doing that, and started my business at that point out of my apartment, and just got really creative. Didn't have a lot of money. My mom would do paperwork for me, and she would also help like book appointments and do phone calls. My ex would do paperwork. I always say that's probably why she's an ex. She had to work for me, but just figured things out. And this is back in 2009 at the time. Upwork was not in existence, but there was a company that they ended up acquiring that would allow you to hire remote workers in the Philippines. And so I was able to hire people in the Philippines for like, at that point, $4 an hour, which was a decent exchange rate, compared to what, like it was what $4 in America still at that point was nothing. And so, but the exchange rate was great, and so therefore we were able to kind of start building a team on very little capital, and I'm really appreciative of that. It's one of the reasons I believe that if someone's starting a business, honestly, having less money is valuable because it allows you to then have to be a little bit more scrappy. You have to solution seek and figure things out and come up with ways of doing things that are non-traditional. And then you really get a chance to look at, okay, what's the fruit of what I'm doing? Is it producing revenue? Is it producing value to my customers? And if so, great, let me put more fire on that. If not, let me pivot. Let me find the next thing and the next thing. And so there was a lot of value at that point of kind of doing something a little crazy. I jumped and I was hoping a parachute would appear. And in my case, it actually did. We eventually did make the company profitable. Had to move back in with my parents for a little bit, but was able to eventually kind of get an office downtown. We were able to start hiring more staff and build a business from there. And that company later we actually ended up selling right before we started on Blue Swipe. So that was kind of my first venture in the payment space, and we really used some of the capital to then start what's now the company I'm still the founder and CEO of. So that was kind of the early start.
What would you take away as what's the most valuable lesson you learned during that time of like this growth and getting all the way to an exit?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest thing at that point would have been don't be afraid to just try, fail, and adjust. Like iterate fast, make decisions, see how it's working. If it's not working, pivot, find the thing that is resonating, and also talking directly to customers. At that point, since I was a kid, I didn't have a lot of resources and I didn't have a lot of capital. I started to figure out like what was the most impactful thing I could do in my company. Well, at that point, it was actually to do the sales. Because I was the founder and I was the most financially motivated to make it work. There was nobody that was more effective in front of a customer, trying to figure out their solutions, figuring out what they needed. And so from those conversations, I learned what resonated from a sales and marketing standpoint. But also, I put my time towards the thing that was going to yield the most amount of money. Then I delegated everything that wouldn't make me money. Paperwork wasn't going to make me money. Accounting wasn't going to make me money. Bookkeeping wasn't going to make me money. There's so many things that I realized that I could get somebody else to do for a very low, buyback rate. If you're, for those that are familiar with that term in your community, and I could focus on driving revenue. Now, today, what drives revenue is not sales in my organization, right? Like today, we lead teams of people that are doing that. We work with partners that are going to be empowering their teams, honestly, to sell our product. But I've always taken that principle now and said, okay, what is going to drive the most amount of revenue in my business? And everything else I need to now delegate. Or maybe I have to do it for a season, but then I need to get someone else to replace that. So that was some of the early stuff. And then also just not being afraid to get close to those customers. Like those early conversations were so valuable to hear, like what were the objections? What were the questions? What were the rebuttals? What were the things that they didn't like? And so then that really informed every product decision and everything we created. Ultimately, the company that I'm still running today really came out of that season where we were just asking questions and we were talking to customers and figuring out what resonates. And so I think that's also a disconnect at times, that people are afraid to really do the front end work. Talk to your customers, figure out what it is that is resonating with them. That's the most valuable work you can do. And then that's going to inform tech, team, and the marketing strategies. It's going to have more people coming to your front door.
Amazing. That's a great lesson. What about the flip side of that? What's one of the biggest challenges you had to overcome during your growth?
It's funny. I look back on it. I'm like, there's so many things that we could have done differently. I think that one of the early challenges was not having money. Now, that's a little misleading, because I thought the biggest challenge was just, hey, I don't have a lot of money. But that really wasn't. The biggest challenge I had was I didn't know what to do next. If I could do it over again, I would have sought mentors way faster. This is, again, dating myself. In my little town of Richmond, Virginia, there was not much of a startup community. There wasn't like entrepreneurial meetups. If they were very few and very far between. There wasn't any accelerator programs. There wasn't... I didn't have any connections because I was truthfully a kid, and my parents didn't come from wealth or anything like that. They weren't entrepreneurs. They've always been in the corporate space. So if I could do it over again, what I would have focused on is finding people that had success. I would have asked, instead of how do I need to grow this business, I would have said, who can help me do it? And that's a principle I've now since learned, is who is way more powerful than how. And so if I could have found some quote unquote who's that had built payment companies, or companies in general, they'd had success financially, then that they could have helped inform my decisions, which would have given me more confidence and helped me grow my business and make more money faster. So I think I probably spent a lot of time feeling like I was constricted financially, and in many ways I was. But the biggest thing I needed to do was know, what do I need to do next to grow my company? And that would have made a significant difference. So having a mentor early is, I think, so invaluable. And when you find a really good one, the thing that I eventually started to get good at was to make a really strong impression. When I had early mentors, I would oftentimes tell them all my ideas, my plans, how how I had this great strategy, and it didn't really help me build the relationship with them, because they were like, okay, well, this guy's kind of already got it figured out. Versus, I think since then I've learned, like, hey, if you find somebody great, ask lots of questions and listen. Hey, what would you be doing if you were in my shoes? How did you grow your companies? Ask more questions. Don't feel like you have to have it all together. There's a lot when you look back on it, but I think the mentorship component was the one that I probably lacked the most. And that probably would have answered 10 other things that were going on that were big obstacles, or at least they felt like big obstacles at the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great lesson, is to find the mentors early. And even talking to other guests on the podcast, the ones who've had lots of early success is because they had mentors early and coaches early. So is that something you still do? Do you still have, mentors and coaches today? And what do those relationships look like?
Yeah, it is the thing that probably in the last, 18 months, 2 years, we've really invested the most in. We had achieved this. I had a lot of mentors and coaches, and it helped us get to a certain level. And I think we honestly got complacent for a while. Some of it was unintentional too. We had raised investment capital back in 2018, 2019. And so a lot of our investors were very successful entrepreneurs, very impressive people, and they gave us a lot of advice during that season. However, there wasn't really like a formal structure as to how they were coaching or mentoring us. They just, wanted to make sure that the business didn't go belly up. And so they had a vested interest in our success, and they wanted to give feedback. However, at a certain point, their feedback was really only meant for that one stage of our business. They were really good at a certain stage. And as things started to grow and mature, and also as I started to ask more like life and holistic questions, I realized there was this gap in where I was and where I needed to be, that I needed somebody to help me, kind of cross. So last 18 months, every important area of our life, we have a coach. I've got a personal trainer now, which I guess this is a good testimony around personal training as well as just coaching and mentorship. I was 165 pounds, going to the gym regularly, never really made any progress. Got a personal trainer, and in basically 18 months went from 165 to 200 pounds, just transformed my whole physique, learned all the things I was doing wrong. And I was like, I can't believe I've been going to the gym for years and I haven't applied, and I didn't know more than what I knew. But you only know as much as you know, right? But yeah, whether it's personal training, we have my wife and I, we actually have a marriage counselor we see regularly, in that we found typically when we're seeing them regularly, man, we don't even have issues. And if we kind of drop off, it's like, man, that's when the stuff starts to show up. And you're like, man, you're getting frustrated with one another. And then, of course, from a business standpoint, I've got a business coach, I've got a life coach, I've got a mentor, and then I've got 3 different communities I'm in with other founders and entrepreneurs that are really growing themselves personally and professionally. And I've learned that you want to put your money where your mouth is. When it comes to paid programs, there's some great ones out there that you don't have to pay for. In fact, our community, Your Life Ventures, is not a paid program. It's one that you have to go through a vetting and selection process for. You can't join it. You can't just buy into it. You have to be vetted, and you have to earn an offer. But I'm a big believer in paid mentorship and paid coaching. I found personally worth every dime. And there's also something I think psychologically that happens when you're putting your money up and saying, okay, I'm paying $6,000 for this program. Then, and you, Nick, I know you've got some very impressive coaches as well that you've hired and paid big dollars to. But what that does to your self-image and what it does to your subconscious mind is, it says I'm worth it. Like, if I'm putting this money towards this thing that's supposed to make me better, then I'm naturally a better person because of it, right? Or it's going to make me better. I'm worth the money or investment. And so, I added it up, and we spend over $65,000 a year in coaching. We even had hired a sleep coach for our son. We couldn't get our son. All my parents out there relate to this, man. The kid was be waking up every 2 to 3 hours. I mean, I was so sleep deprived for months. And hopefully my wife doesn't hear this, because like she's the one who has to get up and actually feed him and everything, right? Man, he was 5 months old. He wasn't sleeping, and we heard about a great sleep coach. Which, if anybody is looking for one, I can refer you to the coach that helped me. Yeah, literally got her. She gave us a plan of what to do. First night, the kid sleeps all the way through the night. I mean, it was just like, wow. So we have found that one of the fastest ways to make progress in your life is find someone who has the results you want, convince them, twist their arm, or pay them to get them to teach you how to do what they did. And everyone's got their own path, but you can typically take what they teach and you can model it and then modify it to what you need to do to move forward. So anyway, long answer to a simple question, but as you can tell, I'm very passionate about this topic.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I like what you said about how the investment in yourself, that affects your subconscious mind and your self-image. And it's like, you probably both heard Dan Martell say that transformation happens at the transaction. So as soon as you've paid the money, you've committed to invest in yourself, then yeah, like you said, that's a reflection of your own self-image. So that's
true.
That's great. I like that.
Yeah.
So what are your goals moving forward with your companies, with your community? What are you excited about in the next 5-10 years?
That's a great question. And I feel like there's a lot of ways I could answer it. When it comes to what we're doing at Blue Swipe, we've got some big things that we're about to do. We're launching a whole new website called blueswipe.io, and it's really going to be communicating the impact that we have with our channel partners that we work with. And we're really passionate about helping software companies, helping banks and fintechs be able to empower their customers through payments. I mean, there's so many things you can do that, things just so much simpler for business owners when it comes to the transaction. And it's at the root of everything we do. I mean, every way we pay today, I mean, cash is almost non-existent, right? You're paying through an app, you're paying with Apple Pay, you're paying through a card. And I think that the simpler you can make that for somebody, combined with for business owners, the more affordable you can make it for them, it just keeps more revenue for them at the bottom line that they can use to grow their business. And so we've really seen the impact of it. And so we're excited to have that happen. And then we've got some things that we're doing to really empower partners, like understanding how this can be a profit center. And, literally for banks and fintechs, we have, instead of us just keeping a program that we charge a subscription on and we make money on it, we actually do a revenue share plan where if someone has a B2B customer base, we will basically share in the revenue with them on every transaction that takes place, however they're billing for their payment processing services. And so it's a way that we really have seen we can give a piece of ownership away and help someone understand how payments can simplify stuff for customers and at the same time have a new value-added product, and so we've seen the magnitude of that. So that's a world that we're very, very in. I think on the personal side, I'm really excited to be able to empower more wantrepreneurs. I mean, I think entrepreneurship is the number one way to impact your life and the world around you. And you think about all the stuff that's taking place in automation. I mean, AI and technology is removing manpower and mind power. I mean, that's what everything's doing. It's taking the rudimentary task off people. It's making stuff in our lives easier, and I think that's great. But the one place that's always going to require mind power and manpower is entrepreneurship. When you can look at how to solve problems in the world, you can make the world a better place, and you can also live a life in the alignment of your values. The idea of, you got to go to work 40 hours a week for 50 weeks a year for 40 years of your lives. If you're doing impact-driven work, that's a great thing. But if you're doing it for the dollar bill, you're doing it for the wrong thing. And so what we really coach people to do is don't chase paychecks, chase purpose. And when you do it right, you can actually live a very purpose-driven life and live a life that's fully in the alignment of your values. And I say that word, maybe I'll just give a quick definition for people that are listening, live a life in alignment of your values. What does that mean? So happiness is oftentimes associated with feeling like my aspirational values align with my practice values. And values typically are going to be expressed in how we spend our time and how we spend our money. People challenge me on that sometimes, and I always give it the wife test. If I say I love my wife, but I don't spend any time with her and I don't spend any money on her, what is she thinking? You don't love me, right? So you got to put your money and your time on the things that you say you love the most. Well, the challenge with this is a lot of times we say that we really value certain things, but then if you look at where our time and money goes, it's not going to those things. And so what we believe is that one of the most fulfilling things you can do in your life is to really have a value inventory of like what is most important to me and how do I shape my life where the most amount of time, money, and attention is going to those things. And then all of a sudden you start to feel this moment of like happiness. You feel this moment of like freedom of like, wow, that is fulfillment. And so I call it, V3 strategy. And it's a very simple concept, but you can go deep on it. But the idea at the end of the day is that you figure out, okay, 5 and 10 years from now, what is my vision, ultimately where I want to be? What kind of life do I want to be living? What kind of impact do I want to be making? And then align all those aspects to your values. What is most important to you? It could be your faith, it could be your family, it could be your fitness, your health, right? It could be your children, the future, the impact you want to leave in the world, the legacy that you want to leave. And then when you have those things clearly defined, then I think that everything you do in your life is just helping you deliver that vision. I call it the vehicle. So my businesses, that's a vehicle to express my values and create the vision I want for my life. It could be your full-time job. That's why typically people have jobs in industries maybe they don't even really like, but it creates the money that they need to be able to take care of their family, which is the thing they really value. And so what we really are passionate about doing is having people buy their time back so that they can go pursue the things that are most important to them and fully live that life in the alignment of their values. And so anyway, we're excited about being able to help empower more individuals and couples feel like they have achieved that ultimate life, that every day I wake up and I am putting my time, my money, and my energy to the things that really matter to me the most. And I think that is true fulfillment when you feel like you're doing that on a daily basis. That's the ultimate vision. And we do have a big, we want to help 1,000 people actually do that. So we've been able to help about 50 or 60 in our community, and we really want to be able to grow that to 1,000 over the next handful of years. Haven't really put a time frame on it. We probably should, but right now that's the vision for the moment.
That's amazing. Do you have any resources you could recommend if somebody's hearing this and they resonate? Yeah, I like to align my aspirations with my actions and feel like, my life's aligned and my values aligned with my values. What's a good place for them to start?
Well, we're actually developing a playbook on how do you implement that V3 strategy into your life. It is still in the works. We're fine-tuning a few things and we're trying to take something that usually is a conversation and put it into a document and into a playbook that somebody can really just access and at least get the core concepts of it. And so it's taking some tooling, but we're hoping to have that finished very soon. So if anybody wants that, I would say, if they message me on Instagram, we're actually trying to grow our Instagram following right now. So if they message me on Instagram, just V3, then as soon as that gets released, I would be happy to send it over to anybody who requested, and that way they can start to implement their vision and values and use their career, their businesses as a way to do it.
Perfect. That's great. Thanks for that offer. And so you
100%.
you mentioned a little bit on Instagram. What are your thoughts on personal branding? Is that something that you're doing actively?
It's something that I thought for a long time. In fact, if anybody maybe is struggling with not wanting to post on Instagram or wanting to get on social media, be an influencer, I'll tell you, a handful of years ago, back in 2017, 18, and 19, I actually completely got off of all social media. I focused solely on my businesses, and we made some of the best progress, both personally and professionally, in that season. That being said, I would say what I've learned today about social media, which is a complete 180 from the Tim Ryan you would have talked to back in 2019, is that it is an incredible way to create impact in the world and to personally develop yourself. And I say that because I didn't like social media because at the end of the day, I didn't like having to talk to a camera. I didn't like listening to my voice. I didn't like looking at myself on camera. I felt like I was kind of being braggadocious when I did it. And I think what I've since learned, and I know you mentioned Dan Martell, like I know I've heard him share similar things. I've heard some of my other mentors have shared similar things as well. If I'm looking at the camera and I'm not liking me, then that's something I need to figure out. Like, why do I not like me? Because no one else is probably thinking about the thing that I'm thinking about. I had a speech impediment growing up. I've been told I probably have dyslexia. I've had all these, personal challenges that as soon as I look at the camera, it was like I was looking at those things. And I think when I started like owning my story and just being okay with me and just being okay, like, hey, I feel like I'm a little quirky. I can, I've got my little interesting flaws and passions and things I like. But at the end of the day, like that's what makes everybody great. If we were all like cookie cutter copies of everything and everyone else, and like, then that's not even fun. It's fun when you are a little different. It's fun when you're a little unique and have your own little quirks. And I've found that if that's bothering me, I probably need to lean into that even more, because when I do, I'm actually going to start to like myself more. I'm going to start becoming my most authentic self. And there's nothing more powerful than just being comfortable in your own skin, owning your story, being okay with you. And so I've found that social media, talking to the camera, is a great way to do that. And then at the same time, it's a great way that, hey, everyone's got great value that they can add. And if you can add that value to the world, like, I almost feel like I'm selfish to not give away good content and not give away good principles and values. And so for me, I think when I think about personal branding, and I'm no expert. There's probably people that are way more qualified to talk about this topic. But to me, personal branding first starts with like, what's my North Star in my life? What's most important to me? And how am I using the mediums that I have in my life that are readily available to me to kind of share that with the world? And people that connect with those concepts and those principles, they're like, dude, I like this guy. I want to follow him. I want to be around him. I want to listen to him. And so I think that helped me reshape the way that I looked at personal branding, and where it felt kind of generic, like I need to put on this image or put on this like certain face. And I've actually found like that's the opposite of what you want to do. You just want to be really authentic and genuine and talk about things that matter to you. And then the right people are attracted to that. So that would be my thoughts. What's your thoughts on personal branding, though? Because I know you guys have an incredible following, obviously built a very successful company, but how's that kind of played out in your life?
I absolutely agree with what you said, that it's a reflection, it's a mirror for you to look at yourself. And yeah, if there's discomfort there, then, maybe that's something you need to look at yourself and accept about yourself. And I think there's stages that everybody goes through. Like, I don't like the sound of my voice. I think everybody's gone through that the first time they're on camera and they're listening to themselves recorded. But it's just something that you integrate and you get over. And yeah, I think, like you said, being comfortable, talking to a camera, putting yourself out there, allows you to connect with yourself, and is part of like personal development. So yeah, I think that's huge from that aspect of developing yourself, but also connecting with your community. And like you said, everybody's got something interesting and some value that they can share. So why not share that with the world? Don't just keep it to yourself. So yeah, I definitely see more and more, I see the value there. Looking forward, what's the biggest challenge, or I like to word it this way, what's the puzzle that you're working on next?
Yeah, so I think there's a few puzzle pieces I think we're putting together. One of them is actually on the topic that you just discussed. We've realized that, okay, if we can have more of the impact that we create one-on-one with someone in more public places, then we can find more people that want that same value added to them coming to us. And that's both for the payment side as well as our, mentorship community. And so right now, one of the puzzle pieces is figuring out, okay, how do we continue to grow social and not make it like this big task, but like a very integrated part of our world. I'll give you an example of how we're doing that. Actually, this week, I'm having a camera installed in my office that basically will just record 24. I don't want to say 24/7, but every time I'm in meetings, every time I'm on Zoom calls or doing meetings like this, podcasts, etc., it's just going to be capturing the content, and then the best content that comes out, whether it's a coaching session 101, or if it's a podcast, or if it is a just conversation we're having with our team, that'll get captured and then cut into clips that we can put out there to add value to the world. So we're trying to create in situations like that allow us to capture more than just create. But by sharing more of this content, I think number one, we'll make a big impact. But then number two, we're going to find more people that want to be a part of what we're doing. And we want to build an incredible army of purpose-driven, cause-driven men and women and couples who want to go change the world. And I think that you can change the world if you change one person's world. And by changing one person's world, then the world gets better in just a little way. And that's one of the reasons we're passionate about entrepreneurship as well as personal finance, because, I mean, my gosh, they used to say that the number one cause of divorce was finances. Mm-hmm. And, a lot of times you see, and I have my own story in this. My wife's got her story around this, but you see the turmoil that finances has in a family. And so it's like if you can help empower adults to have better finances, better time in their life, they're going to raise, in most cases, children that have stronger values and stronger self-images, and they have stronger security. And then guess what? Those people continue to change the world. And so I think by making an impact in one person's life, I think we underestimate the impact and the ripple effect of that. And so I think right now we're trying to find that army of people, whether it's business owners with payments or if it's with individuals who want to become business owners, and just empower them to do great things in the world. So the social aspect is definitely a big puzzle piece that we're solving. And then there's within that some other things we realized, and this is maybe helpful for people that do a lot of, I guess, repetitive training and teaching. We realized that there's only a few ways you can get leverage in the world, and one of them is content. And so we launched a onboarding and training tool that we use, and we're creating tutorials and trainings for really everything that we teach in all of our communities. Mm-hmm. And that is a big project. It's been something that already it's had an incredible impact. We launched an app. We have 3 different training modules we've created, and for the people that we are coaching and mentoring, we're really providing them the best tools and resources to be able to grow and scale their businesses. That's not just in a one-on-one fashion, but in a way that can be that content can live and create forever. So learning how to create playbooks and SOPs and trainings and recordings and tutorials is, I think, one of the best ways that you can actually let the lessons that you've learned not just die with you, but live on without you. And that's also another way that you can create impact, right? So, but yeah, social, creating content is something that's very new. And I used to be a big introvert. I was definitely the kid in school that never wanted to talk to anybody. And so learning how to be a little bit more vocal. And also, I've historically been a kind of a private person. I don't like really talking about myself. And so now having to put all this stuff out there, it's been a fun personal growth journey, and one that I've been encouraging everyone in our sphere of influence to really go on the same one.
Glad you're doing that. You're putting yourself out there to build that community. Next question is faith or spirituality part of your life, and to what extent does it influence your business journey?
Man, that's a big question. It is actually, and faith has been a big. I did not, and there's, I've got friends that are Muslims. I got friends that are Hindus. I have friends that are Christians. I didn't grow up really with much of a spiritual foundation at all in any world. I used to say that we were CEOs. My parents would go to church on Christmas and Easter only. So we grew up kind of going to church on those like more traditional holidays. But actually, in my mid-20s, I had a really, I guess you could say, almost crazy spiritual experience that we don't have time to get into today, but had a really big spiritual awakening, and it's probably been the biggest thing that has impacted my life over the last 10 years. And it's led to everything we're doing. It's led to the marriage we have, how we're raising our son. And so, if that's an area that someone's looking to grow in, I think everyone should. Doing that deep dive into what do I really believe is just so incredibly important. And today, I would say that the way that it's really impacted our lives is every single day I wake up and pray. In fact, the morning routine has been something that's been really instrumental as well. So every day, I've got my routine I do in the morning, and includes, for me, reading the Bible, praying. I read a self-development book, and I also do positive affirmations. And I found that by, the routine doesn't have to be exactly that. Everyone's got their own routine, but by having a routine that really is allowing you to connect with your creator and connect with your core, I think is just so powerful. So where it's probably shown up the most is when we get into tough situations, we just pray about it, and I let God guide me. And that's been it's been almost like hard to describe the impact that has. And I almost feel I want everybody to be able to feel like they have that. When you get backed into a corner, yes, you can go to your spouse. Yes, you can go to mentors, but you can also go to God. And I believe he talks to you.
Amazing. I definitely want to hear more about that, but yeah, we can leave that for another podcast.
Yeah, sounds
Um,
good.
yeah, no, that's great. Okay, we can get into our rapid fire questions here.
Okay.
Just yeah, some quick answers. What are top book recommendations you have for entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs?
Yeah, top book recommendations. That's another tough one because I feel like I've had so many books that have been impactful for me. A classic that I found too few people actually read is Think and Grow Rich. Definitely a classic. Another great one is The Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki. Most people know him because he was the same author as Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Kind of, it's the number one personal finance book of all time. I think it sold something like 25 million copies. However, he wrote a sequel to it called The Cash Flow Quadrant, and it was one of the books that really changed my perspective on business and life forever, especially the first section. The first section really gets you thinking about, like, what direction do I want to head, and what kind of business do I want to own? What kind of income do I want to make? Especially if you're in still that kind of wantrepreneur stage where you're starting businesses and you're early into it. Definitely read that book. And if you're a business owner, you're dissatisfied, I definitely recommend that book as well. And then the last one's Atomic Habits. So many people know that one, but man, it's a classic. Learning how to habit stack, learning to have your triggers. I mean, most of life comes down to creating good habits and killing your bad habits. When you can do those and you feel like you have a strategy to be able to implement good habits and stop your bad habits, I feel like you feel so empowered and in control of your life. So yeah, Atomic Habits would definitely be one.
Amazing. Oh, hey, we got Brandon's on the next podcast coming up here. We got them stacked.
Oh, let's do it. Oh, I know Brandon. Brandon's a
Yeah,
great guy.
yeah. I'm looking forward to talk with him. But yeah, I'll keep shoot through these. Dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be?
Ooh, dinner with anyone dead or alive. Okay, so for me, we talked faith earlier. Naturally, having a dinner with Jesus, I think would be pretty cool. I would probably have a few questions for him. So that would be somebody you could say dead and alive, depending on your beliefs. I think it would be really, I think it'd be really cool to have a dinner with like George Washington and to just hear his mindset and what was that man like. And I mean, first president of the United States of America, doing what was never done before. Like you think about sometimes the pressure and stress you can have as a business owner or in your own personal life, and when you compare it to people that have done things like that, colonizing and creating a country from the ground up, I mean, it really does put things in perspectives. So I think George Washington would probably be top of the list there.
Absolutely. Awesome. That's great. What's your favorite app or most used app on your phone?
Man, these are some tough questions. So most used app, it's interesting. Man, I probably use my Gmail more than I'd like to admit, but I use WhatsApp a lot. So I'm a big believer in WhatsApp. We use WhatsApp with all of our teams and communities. The ability to just send people audio notes, videos, PDFs, put things in a group that's labeled. I've personally found in the last 18 months, WhatsApp has been like a secret sauce for being able to communicate quickly with the team, eliminate meetings that are not necessary while keeping communication super high. So it's one of the ways that we really empower teams. And I'll regularly just hop on and record a video, send it out with a thought, a tip, a mindset, a question. So I think WhatsApp would probably be my most used app.
Awesome. And how do you unwind after a long day?
I recently put something out on social media about this. A lot of times, if you think about unwinding, people typically think like TV, video games, maybe scrolling social media, doing something that's kind of like put your feet up and just experience something. Maybe going to the movies, whatever it is. Well, they actually show scientifically that doesn't allow your brain to rest because you're getting so much dopamine and so much input. And so the way that I've actually found that I unwind the best is actually reading a book. If I can read a book or work out, which is probably my biggest passion is probably working out, then that will allow me to feel de-stressed more than anything else. So if I've already worked out, it's going to be reading. If I haven't, it's going to definitely be working out.
That's great. And Tim, where can people find and connect with you?
Probably the best way to connect with me, we're on LinkedIn, and they can obviously go to our my website. But I would say probably the best place to connect would just be on Instagram, Tim Ryan Life. Tim Ryan Life. Follow me on there. We'll be continually putting out more and more content. But if you have any questions, anything that we talked about today that you want to connect on, just shoot me a DM and I'd be happy to connect.
Great, and we'll have a link there in the show notes so everyone can find you. But Tim,
Sounds
it was a
good.
pleasure speaking with you. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much, Nick. And we're super pumped for what Calgary Custom's doing. We love the work. We love what you put out on the content that you put out. You guys have so many great customers and testimonials, and also I just love the fact that you actually put this podcast on to empower individuals and entrepreneurs. So yeah, thanks for having me on, and anything we can ever do to help, let us know. We are going to be a little sneak peek, as we are probably going to be launching a podcast in the future. So maybe I could try to have you on the podcast in the future as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. Appreciate it, Tim.